Hi, I'm Patrick.
I'm Leanne.
And this is our real wood bus. Its name's Wayne. Come on in and check it out. This is our bedroom area, and we went with a lofted queen size bed, and we set it up to where it's sort of a Murphy style, and the whole bed will fold up when we need more interior space for moving stuff. It helped a lot. Our water tank is underneath it, our electrical system's underneath it, and then there's also a dog bed. We have 2 full-size dogs. We went with a 200-gallon water tank. We had a smaller one, and it just did not cut it. So we ended up with a much larger tank, plumbing it in. It lasts us anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, and that's with showering every other day, cooking, and with doing laundry in here. When we decided on what kind of electrical system, we did set it up to where we can be hooked up to the grid, 110. We also went with a solar setup, which we're going to expand later to where we will be completely off-grid. Right now, all of our lighting, we have outlets in all the corners that are USB and 12 volt. Yeah, the 12 volt outlets work great for charging all your devices, phones, things like that. Our water setup is also 12 volt system, so we only rely on the grid for a few items at the moment. Eventually, we should be able to run everything off grid. Actually, we pieced a lot of our solar setup together. We have 2 deep cycle D8 diesel batteries. They're about this big and way too much. So it's good for when you're not on the move. And then we just have a standard 12 volt charge controller and a couple panels. So underneath us here are some of our storage areas. We have clothing storage throughout all 5 of these bins. We put off-season items in there a lot of times. And then we have a closet set up in this corner here, and then there's another one here. They each have a small dresser inside of them and hanging storage for 40 items, maybe. You still only have to do laundry about average, same as if you had a house, about once a week, or later if you want to stretch your clothes. It works pretty well. We went with almost all of our windows were recycled out of a small Dodge RV from the late 70s. And they're really big, so we wanted to put those in the bedroom. We wanted a lot of light in here. And we went with an extremely simple curtain setup. This is all copper wire and just regular house curtains to block out most of the sunlight. A lot of times they stay open. Most of our bus, even though it is extremely different from most buses, it was still done on a heavy budget, just like most of us do. A lot of the materials you see here were free or extremely cheap. All the windows were free, all the curtains were free, all the copper wiring was left over after we did the 110 volt system. So we just reused some of that leftover materials. So this is the view towards the rear of the bus, and we did an overhang outside that's 32 inches, and that gave us quite a bit of off-season storage area above here. You can see the closet sizes are about 2 foot by 2 foot by 8 foot tall, so it's a decent amount of storage space for a very small area. We went with this idea. First we were going to do the Murphy bed with under storage, and decided it would be more convenient to have a real closet, even though it ate up some footage. Alright, well let's move towards the front of the bus, check the rest of it out. So this is our bathroom, and we went with a wet bath setup. We have our Nature's Head composting toilet in here, and the shower is the entire room. We were going to do a door, but what we found out was with a curtain, the steam comes out and then you don't pass out, almost. It gets way too hot in there even with just a curtain. And Leanne and I did all of the tile work that is in there. Our friend Wes Lewis and Delilah actually gave us all of the tile that we used to do it. I'm sure if you guys have seen this video, you've seen Wes's bus, and there's a very cool mural in that bathroom as well. The Nature's Head's really nice. We probably dump the solids, maybe once every 2 months for 2 of us. It does really well. Liquids about once a week. There's really no smell at all. We've had it for about a year now and been using it, we like the Nature's Head composting toilet quite a bit. So the Nature's Head composting toilet is done really well with getting water on it 3 or 4 times a week. The only thing we had to modify is the container that holds the urine container. It doesn't have any drain holes. We drilled 3 holes in the bottom of that holds the pee container, and that releases any rain or shower water that gets in it. But other than that, we haven't had any issues with water getting into the composting area. So the tile work that we did in here, it is on all 4 sides, and each one of them is a different mural. There is a waterfall, a tree, a windmill, and then a mountain scene on this wall. And even with getting all of the tile donated, we had an extreme amount of time and a lot of extra grout to do it. So on the tile work, we have a lot of hours in it. This was our first tile project ever, and I would say there's probably well over 24 hours in this very small square footage. If you're thinking about doing it, take a lot of time. Ask all your friends for all their free tile. If pieces are too big, you can smack them with a hammer, or you can get a tile cutter. What we had to do is we actually cut out on cardboard the sizes that we were going to have, and then we laid all of our pieces out. And then you take a few photos of it once you're happy with the design, and then you have to transfer it onto the wall. We did all of ours while it was facing upright, so it was a little bit tricky, but it all came out fairly well. We're pretty happy with our tile. So our shower setup's very much like a house one. It's just a standard shower head. You can add a hose just like a house one. We did it all with PEX tubing, and it's running through the 12-volt RV pump. It's SureFlow water pump, and we're pretty happy with that as well. It gives very good water pressure, and we have a hot water on demand system that is propane, and it gets too hot if you're not careful, if you have it set too high. But overall, it's set up just like a house. You turn it on and go. So on our floor, we sealed everything with caulking first, and then did a layer of the rubberized coating like a Flex Seal. And then on top of that, we did a epoxy resin, much like an automotive resin, and dyed that so it's kind of a greenish blue color. It worked well for a while, but what ended up happening was the resin separated from the rubberized coating. So do a little bit more research. We are in the middle of remodeling our bathroom. Overhead book storage here. This was actually my grandmother's shelf that she had gave to me, and I had to find a spot for it to fit in the bus, and it ended up being here. It works out pretty well. We went and put just regular eye hooks they sell bungee cord by the foot at the hardware store. I advise this for anything that you're going to be driving a lot. You could do something like this. It holds everything in place very well. So this is kind of our kitchen area, as well as we went with a 110 unit. This is a washer and a dryer, and this is the household model. And we actually went with this model because the RV model is almost the same square footage that it takes up. This one's a little bit taller, but overall it's got a higher capacity, and from what I've read on reviews, the RV models don't work nearly as well as a house model, of course. We're pretty happy with it. It does use water when it dries items, which we thought was interesting. So your items come out 90% dried, so if you want them very dry, you have to hang them up afterwards. But overall, we were happy with implementing this into our bus. Working very well for us, I believe. This is our fireplace area. We are in Colorado, and it does get pretty cold during the winters. This is way overkill. However, this was a gift from my grandparents. It was their potbelly stove. So with a very small fire, it will heat this entire bus up to 100 degrees if you just let it. This is all the original bus metal from when we cut our top off. And it has an air pocket in between it, and it has a concrete board fireplace insulation behind it. What it does is there's a cut at the bottom and a cut at the top, and it sucks the cool air off the floor. And as these panels heat up, it naturally sucks the cool air up and pushes it out the top, and it circulates without a fan in here fairly well. It is overkill, but it's not really any bigger than if you put a smaller one in. You're still going to need at least a few feet on each side for safety reasons. We're very happy with this wood burner. It's very warm in here. You can hang out like it's summertime all winter.
All winter.
So when we were doing all the metal work in here, Leanne had been practicing her paint skills with spray paint style art and space murals. So she did an entire space mural around our wood burner. So underneath our wood burner, the wheel well is back here, and then underneath the bus, there's actually an entire open area up until you get to the fuel storage. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a hatch in the floor here and a hatch outside, so you can load all your wood in for the winter outside of the bus, and then when you need more, you just lift the hatch and put it in. And this eliminates a lot of dirt and crud from bringing it through either of the doors, and it also makes it to where you can hold 4 or 5 days worth of wood underneath, so you don't have to go outside in the snowy snow. So on the interior of the kitchen, we decided to build our own countertops, and one reason we did that is the width of a standard countertop comes out quite a bit further. This helps a lot with the tightness of the width of the bus. And we went with a epoxy style countertop that we built ourselves. And what we did was we glued all these coins down, and we grouted in between all of them first to eat up some of the space and so you wouldn't see the glue. And then we have about a little bit over an 1/8 inch of epoxy resin on top. Considering it's an 8-foot long counter minus the stove and the sink square footage, we used less than a gallon of epoxy resin. And if you've looked into doing an epoxy resin countertop, you'll know that the resin is about $75 a gallon for good resin. So if you do the grout, it cuts your costs by half at least. So on our countertops, we made our own cutting boards that are just made out of the same material. A lot of times you can get it from the hardware stores. And this sink is actually out of the same Dodge RV that our windows came out of. It's a small double wide. It's not very deep, but it works very well if you're washing and drying your dishes by hand. And the cutting boards make for a lot of extra counter space as well inside of the bus. It covers our oven also. This oven here is 74 camper propane oven. It's just a standard one you can find. It's a 3-burner. From our experience, it's worked very well for stovetop cooking. Leanne has done a lot of baking in it. It does take a little bit of adjustment to get the temperatures right and to let it preheat the right amount. Once you get that down, it's just as easy as using a new oven. We do cook in here pretty regularly, I would say 5 to 6 days a week. As long as you have an overhead hood, it doesn't get too hot in the summer. But other than that, the space, the 8-foot counter, and also the space on top of the washer, it gives us a lot of counter space. You have plenty of room to prep, and it really didn't take up a lot of our bus. So on all the cabinetry doors, we actually just went and bought regular trim molding. And what we did was we did a small cut with a table saw on the inside to where this plastic, this is just a plexiglass that looks kind of like stained glass. It works not too expensive to go this route. Doing it with the trim cut the cost of having cabinets made by a few $100s. We did all of it ourselves, and then we lined the inside with cedar on the back, and we just did biscuit joints on all this. So you can buy a biscuit cutter fairly cheap, and once you do a few YouTube videos, you can figure it out. So on all of our cabinets, we went with just a higher veneer plywood. This is not hardwood. The front face looks like hardwood, but it is plywood. And we were able to cut the entire bottom section and the top section out of one piece of plywood. And then we used a cheaper 1/2-inch plywood on all the rest of the framing. Overall, the space is very well. I'd say it's about a 12-inch interior space, so plate fits in well and cups fit in there very well as well. So on our water system, because we went with the composting toilet, we do not have a black tank. And when we decided where we were going to move, our friend that we are on his property, he owns the property, and so we have a gray water system that's all natural. It is plumbed down to the bottom of the bus, and then it's just trenched out away from the bus for water drainage. And because where we're at, it's very sandy, it's high country, low, and we basically have shrubs. We don't have any trees here. So everywhere that the gray water runs off of, you get a little bit of green foliage outside that we don't normally have. And then we have another smaller bathhouse, and we actually have a watermelon plant with the gray water down there. And it feeds the watermelon plant. It's worked out for us very well here. The refrigerators, well, the top one is a regular small refrigerator, and the bottom one is actually a freezer, the whole thing. And at first, we just had the fridge. It worked for us fairly well, but if you're in a stationary place, you really want to have frozen foods and be able to freeze items. They're just standard 110 units. They really don't draw a whole lot of power. We're hoping once we have the solar setup complete, we'll still be able to run both of these with all of our solar. They're just energy efficient, newer refrigerators and freezer. Our refrigerator setup, it's been a very sufficient amount of storage for 2 people. Go to town, once a week and get groceries sometimes, but having the larger freezer area, it really helps to not have to go to get food as often. So this is our living room area, and it's set up just like a small studio style living area. This is a futon as well as a couch. We went with all 12-volt lighting throughout the house and the living room area. It's worked out really pretty well for us. It's plenty of light for no electricity, for no money. It is almost all the cam lights here are 12-volt. I believe they're 1-inch fog lamps. So they're waterproof. They're also in our bathroom. And that lighting is more of a normal neutral light. It's not like a lot of LEDs that puts off a blue light or very odd cool light. We also have the rope lights above that are they're for fun time. They change to white, red, blue, green, and flash and do all that stuff. But I would say most of the time the small cam lights that don't directly face down have been the best lighting option that we've found so far.
So this is my spice rack setup. There's room for pretty much everything. I bake quite a bit, so I guess if I had to change something, I'd add another shelf so I could put my extracts and stuff up there.
That was from Habitat of Humanity Restore, which is also where our hood was from. I got these racks for like $3 and the hood for $10, and you can get a lot of your kitchen needs and other fixtures and lighting options from there for extremely cheap. So this is the front of our bus, and as you can see, we've lifted it and the entire bus is made of a wood structure now. This is our mud room and our entry area. But what we did is we actually cut the entire bus off from right behind the driver's seat back and above all the window pillars. And we did an entire wood structure, built much of a home standard and grade. It's worked out really well for us because we don't travel in our bus very often. I drove it, when we moved it to this spot, I drove it 12 hours and it still moved 60 miles an hour down the highway just fine. The one reason we went with a wood structure is we really wanted a cabin feel. We're moving out here to Colorado in a little bit higher elevation than we were ever used to. One thing I did was the flooring is actually 4x8 sheets of plywood that you would normally put down first as an underfloor. It's the snap together 4x8 sheets, and we took a blowtorch, one of the small ones that you normally would use to clear snow off a sidewalk, and we burnt the entire floor, and then we did a polyurethane coating. And we have 2 pit bulls, and we've been in here over a year, and the floor's holding up pretty well still. That was only with a couple layers of polyurethane. If you really took the time, I think you could be happy with a very simple floor that's extremely cost effective. So on all of our wood structure, it's built 16 on center, 2x4 framing, and when we attached all of the plywood, we glued every single piece, and every single thing was screwed together. We didn't use any kind of framing nails. The 4x4 posts here, they are somewhat structural, but it didn't need it when we first did it. I added them for an inside look because I really liked the wood beams. And overall, the structure's held up extremely well. Like I said, we haven't drove it a lot, but we haven't had any leaks in a year. It does have a metal cabin roof on it. The entire bus is done with 3-inch. What we did was we did the 4x8 sheets of foam and then we cut them and fit them with a gap of about 1.5 inches around all 4 sides. And we spray foamed in between every single one of them and every joint. And this gave us a lot of the rigidity of spray foaming the entire bus with half of the cost of doing complete spray foam. All of the 3-inch foam was from a resale store, so it was all recycled, so that cut the cost quite a bit. We actually were able to do the spray foam insulation for under $1,000, and then I believe I only had like $300 in all the 4x8 sheets that we bought to do the inside. I was able to pick those up for $10 a piece. That was from a resale store in Kansas City. This is our entertainment center, and originally we had a 22-inch TV, and my grandparents actually gave this one to us, and it's way oversized for a bus, but when it's storming out or when it's really snowy out, it makes for a really nice home movie theater. Being this close, it's not too close to you, even though it's a large TV, because this is only like 6 foot apart from the couch. It works out well for us as well. This is wired into the grid right now, same as the refrigerator and washer dryer unit. However, we believe we can get it down with solar, so we can have an entertainment center that'll run on solar. So what we do here is I work with a friend of mine, and we make custom urethane castings, and we can do any kind of casting that a person needs, but we specialize in shift knobs for hot rods. We do all the prep work, paint work, and we actually do the original sculptures out of clay originally, and then we create our own molds and castings. We do everything from beer tap handles to shift knobs, and sometimes other reproduction artwork for our friend Wes Lewis. We have a very small shop that we're operating out of, and my friend Josh Christie, that I'm also partners with, he lives in a 61 International bus, so he's also a Skoolie guy. Yeah, we're out here hanging out in Skoolies, building custom artwork and shift knobs. What we did on the flooring, it is insulated as well. However, we used all of the bus insulation from when we cut the entire top off, so all the original insulation is in the flooring. It works very well most of the winter. Like I said, the wood burner keeps it super hot, so at the very coldest, you gotta have a pair of socks on in here. Really not bad all winter. So a lot of people, their insulation is not any good out of their bus. Our bus was an Air Force bus, and it was stored inside the majority of its life. It was also a higher top bus with a full AC system down both sides. So the entire bus was heavily insulated to keep the AC in. So we were able to reuse all of that insulation. So in our mudroom up here in the front, we did a small shelf under here for under storage for boots, and then we did just a standard closet rack for all of our coats for the summertime. This bus here is a 1990 Chevy, and it has the 8.2 Detroit diesel with a turbo, and it still drives just fine with an entire cabin on the back. We actually had it weighed, and it only weighs a little bit over 22,000 pounds with everything on it. Yeah, it actually, because we took out, it had a 3-cylinder Cummins diesel motor under the rear end that ran the AC system. And when I took that AC system out, it dropped the weight of the bus like 1,500 pounds. It was ridiculous. And then cutting the entire metal structure off also lowered the weight as well. So overall, it's still way underweight. We could add another 8,000 or 9,000 pounds to it, and it would still pull just as easily, I think, as it does. It will go down the highway 60, 65 miles an hour, no problem. It's pretty comfortable still to drive. Everybody was telling me it's going to be too heavy. You're putting all this wood on there, it's going to be too heavy. And then after I took all the metal off and took all the AC unit, all the things out of it, it's still way underweight. And it has, I wonder if it was beefed up because it does have a full towing and brake system on it, and it was an Air Force bus, so it might have been built to a little bit different specs than a school bus. So I bought this bus. It was an Air Force bus out of Kansas City, and a Boy Scout troop had bought it in '98, and they had stored it inside its whole time that they had it. It's got 58,000 original miles on it. It's barely broke in. He originally had it listed for a lot higher, and he had it listed for almost a year. And I talked to him on a few different occasions, and I told him I wanted to know what their bottom dollar was because I was going to Oklahoma City to look at another bus that was considerably cheaper, but it needed all new tires and a few other things. And at this point, they had already bought a new touring bus for the Boy Scout troop, and they were ready to get rid of it, and they just told me to come get it with the money I had, which was $1,500. I drove it back from Kansas City like a dream. I haven't had an issue with it since then. So this is the outside of Wayne, our real wood bus. Wayne is my great Uncle Connie Wayne, and it's my grandmother's brother, and he actually raised me for quite a while. I lived with him in the hills of Missouri near the Lake of the Ozarks. He had all the junk in the backyard. He was a very good man to me. I learned a lot of things. I learned how to build things. I learned how to weld. I learned how to fish. All the things you wanted to do as a kid, I learned from him. It was amazing. On the front of the bus, you'll see it in a little while, there's a chrome swan. And when he passed away, I received that chrome swan. And that's how this bus got its name. We went with a obscure outside siding. It's held up very well. We went with a oil-based stain and clear coat on all of it. It's held up pretty well. The UV resistance, I feel like, is a lot lower. Some of these boards were actually burnt, like my floor, all the way across. And in the sunlight, they've started to fade. So on attaching all of this stuff, what we did was, it has metal up to the window pillars of the original windows. So all of our framing is bolted to that, all of our wood framing, and then from there we have the 4x8 sheets of plywood that we attached. All the wood surfaces are glued and screwed, and then throughout all of the metal surfaces it's attached with metal screws. And if you notice, from here up to this board here, it's all metal screws going into the metal everywhere. And then from there up, it's held together like a house on all the wood surfaces. Doing this, everything laid down very well in the majority of the time. There wasn't too much on the modifying on the outside of the skin of the bus. After the last couple of years, I think it's held up very well to being put together this way. Because it is wood, it needs to be re-coated every few years, just like a wood cabin would be. I believe it's all pine. So because we're in a very dry region, which today is raining, but we're in a very dry region, so I'm not worried about moisture as much. It is coated with the underlining and the tie-back linings like a regular home. So I'm not too worried about rusting on the metal or rotting on the wood. The dry climate helps us out here quite a bit. The only thing that I've really thought about changing is I'm doing the under storage here. So I want to do maybe a couple tables that fold off the bus for the summertime, and I want to do some under storage here. But other than that, we're very happy with the outside of our bus, and it gets a lot of looks when we have drove it. All of the 2x4s and all the structure of the entire cabin section is bolted on, I believe, step up from 3/16, the next bolt size up. It's all bolted in with carriage bolts and washers, and so every 2x4 was 16 centered for the wood structure, and then every extra pillar also got an additional 2x4. So the bus is bolted down pretty darn well as far as the wood structure attaching to the metal. It's all bolted with carriage bolts. We didn't really have any swaying or issues when we drove it. It was driving through Kansas up to Colorado. So the Kansas was extremely easy, 65 miles an hour the whole time. I didn't have any swaying when I was driving it. It pulled very well, I would say. When we got to the Colorado area, coming up the Royal Gorge Pass, we slowed down to about 30, going up over the hill, the mountain. So, other than that, it's been very well to drive, even with all this structure on it. So, and it didn't make a lot of extra wind drag. It only sticks up, I want to say 3 foot at the peak above the bus area. Yeah, the chimney does come off. Right now, we're setting at 12 foot at the peak of the roof. So we're still way under what you're allowed to be without a permit. As long as you take that off, it goes anywhere a diesel truck will go. So this is the front area of the bus where we attached onto the existing structure. And the only thing that I ended up doing, other than attaching to the regular metal, is I made a piece that arches across the entire roof, and it comes up about this far, probably about 14 to 16 inches above the cab area all the way around, and it's welded all the way around the bus to make it watertight. And then we, just as a double precaution, we also did, there's a steel caulking that's made for metal, and we caulked that entire area around all those seams that we welded all the pieces on to make sure it would be watertight in between, and we haven't had a leak in there yet. It's worked out well for us. One thing we want to do is we want to paint it like a dark green color, the same as the roof, the original Air Force blue that it has. So, and this is the swan that actually gave the bus the name Wayne, which is after my great uncle, Connie Wayne Thornburg. At the moment, we are only running one solar panel, which works fine for all of our lighting and our phone chargers, cigarette lighters, and the water system. We're wanting to add probably about 1,500 to 2,000 watts of solar and battery bank storage. Eventually, that's honestly, that right there is the same cost as your entire bus build, which all of you will figure out. I'm Patrick.
I'm Leanne.
And thanks for checking out Real Wood Bus. If you have any questions, you can email us or hit us up, message us on Instagram. The Instagram is Real Wood Bus. And if you have any questions or you'd like to check out the website on all of our shift knobs and casting, that's fanchase.com. And our email there is fanchasestudio@yahoo.com. And we make everything that you can need copied or casted. This is actually a casting of a real skull that we did a few of for our friend Wes. And we do all kinds of other things. We do 3D stickers. So if you have another bus that you have a sticker and you want something a little bit more solid, you can give us an email or shout, and we could carve you something out of clay and copy it and make your own 3D stickers. And everything will be in the link below this video. Thanks for checking out the bus.